Mark, the Olmsted County and some other counties recently announced the filing of a lawsuit. Probably end up going class action because I see other states are even taking a look at this. But what are the chances of this lawsuit prevailing in court? What do you think?
So we feel pretty good about it. Each lawsuit by each county, and there's a few cities that are suing, are independent. So while it'll feel like a class action lawsuit, it's really going to be called a multi-district litigation. And we understand that the federal district court is going to collect all of these lawsuits across the nation and put them into one district and have one judge determine all of the lawsuits. So it'll feel a lot like a class action, but it'll actually be individual. So Olmsted County has a lawsuit, Mower County has a lawsuit, Steele County has a lawsuit. They'll all be individual, but they'll all track together. So we feel pretty good about the nature of the lawsuit, the claims that each county is making based on our own experiences. But we also recognize that because it has gotten to be so large and will continue to get larger, that the lawsuit is going to take quite some time.
Mm-hmm. And again, just explain this lawsuit. I know we've had some news coverage on it, but what's going on? You have Olmsted County and other counties essentially accusing the opioid manufacturers and others of really selling these addicting drugs, and we know the problem that it's become.
We know that there's a significant opioid epidemic. We know that the addiction rate is very high for people that are on opioids, and so it's kind of looking at all the impact that have been on the county and on the community from that, and trying to go after these people. And one of the things I think that needs to be very clear is we're going after the manufacturers of the opioids and the large distributors of the opioids. We're not suing doctors. We're not suing pharmacists, anything like that, because those are the people that were really misled. The pharmaceutical companies came out back in the early 90s, mid 90s, and said, you know what, opioids are not that addictive. You should be giving out more, bigger prescriptions and that type of stuff. And they really, through all sorts of different marketing tactics, pulled the wool over the doctor's eyes and said, these aren't that bad. It wasn't until after all these people started getting addicted that the doctors realized, everybody realized that they were being misled by this misrepresentation. And then the other piece of it for the big distributors is that they didn't control the supply. So these gobs and gobs of pills are going out into the community, and they're being sold, they're being abused, and so that's part of the allegations against the distributors too.
How do you feel? I mean, I'm thinking, I've heard of cases, in fact, I think I know some people who had a prescription drug, mainly painkillers, for back pain or things like that. The prescription runs out, they get it renewed. At some point, you would think a doctor would say, this is too much, or this is enough, we need to do something else.
As we look back at the marketing tactics that were going on, part of the message that was being given to doctors was, first of all, it's not really that addictive. And so, they weren't really looking at these prescription refills as being part of an addiction pattern. But they were also being told that when people are requesting more and more pills, it's because they're starting to get immune to them, so you need to increase the dose. And so instead of seeing an addiction pattern, they were being told that that's a level of immunity, and they're flooding more into the market. Again, it's not until after it was really too late, when all these people are highly addicted, that people figured out that there was this gross misrepresentation out there.
Have you heard, like Mayo Clinic or other healthcare providers, have they weighed in? Do they have the same feeling? That maybe they were sort of hoodwinked?
So I've talked to a lot of doctors about the addiction. I know that Mayo Clinic has changed their prescribing practices a couple years ago at least, and they're being very tight with the control of the prescriptions that are going out. In fact, the information that our lawsuit is based on would show that our prescription rate in Olmsted County is significantly lower than pretty much every place else in the rest of the state. And I think that's largely due to our healthcare providers really paying attention to this. The other piece of it, though, is the admission rate for opioids to treatment centers in Olmsted County is significantly high. So, while we might not see the prescription rates, we're seeing the back end of that addiction with the treatment admissions.
Years ago, Minnesota was involved in what turned out to be a groundbreaking lawsuit against the tobacco industry. A lot of people thought, you're crazy. You're never going to beat the tobacco industry. In fact, I remember I went to trial, and then before the trial even wrapped up, they decided the evidence was so damning that they ended up settling for a couple of $1 billion. Do you see any comparisons with these two lawsuits?
They're similar in that we're going after a huge provider, a huge marketer out there. So they're similar in that way. They're similar in that it's nationwide. There's counties and cities all across the nation that are going after these folks. So there's this there's going to be this force out there, and they're also similar in that we're going after largely people that have created a significant public nuisance by their negligent behavior. So some of the themes are the same, but one of the big differences is that the tobacco litigation was largely states taking them on. This litigation is largely the local units, the local government units. Olmsted County, not the state of Minnesota. Mower County, Steele County. So there's going to be a little bit difference. And the other difference is that if we're able to prevail down the road, whatever Olmsted County gets out of its lawsuit, whatever relief we get, comes to Olmsted County. The tobacco litigation resulted in all these resources going to the state, and they were dispersed around through state programs. But it was hard to see some of that locally in our community having a direct impact on our community.
So this is being driven by what you hear more and more from the feds and state officials, local officials, this opioid abuse epidemic. Just how bad is it?
People that have this tremendous need for opioids, people that have terminal cancer, the intractable pain from cancer, significant pain, they need opioids, and we need to make them available. But what we have found is that some people can get addicted to opioids really easily, and they can't be weaned off quite as easily. And when they get cut off, we see them going to heroin out on the street, buying it out on the street because frankly it's cheaper. People are dying from this stuff. In fact, one of the anecdotal things that I've learned through looking at narcotics investigations that are going on is that we're starting to see some dealers, some heroin dealers, actually put a stimulant into their heroin because people are dying. And frankly, I think the dealers want to keep their clients alive so they can sell more. So they're putting cocaine or methamphetamine into the heroin to kind of give them a little bit of a stimulant so they don't die. That's how bad opioids can be. We've seen lots of really unfortunate stories of people that got addicted to painkillers because they had a tooth pulled or something like that. It is that addictive. It can happen that easy. And so it's because of these bad marketing practices and everything, and this flood of pills that are out on the street. It is that bad. People are dying left and right. We hear from law enforcement and the fire department, the first responders, the number of people they save every day. We're very fortunate in Olmsted County that most of our first responders carry the naloxone, the antidote, and they're saving lives every day. And these people literally get up from the scene and just walk away.
But we're still getting an overdose.
But
it seems
the
like a fatal overdose at least once a week, it seems.
We're getting information, I get information from the emergency room, the number of people that they save And it's a number every week that people are coming in, being brought in and being saved. So it's a very, very significant problem, and we got to nip it in the bud.
If a person, they've been on pain pills for some time for whatever reason, they maybe are getting a sense that they're becoming addicted. What do they do? Go to their doctor and say, don't give me any more pills, but then what do they do? And can a doctor refuse? If the doctor suspects that they're hooked?
Doctors do refuse. Pharmacists do refuse to fill those. And that's where we see people then start to reach out into the street. There was a message, I'm trying to think of where I was at. I was at a meeting, and I think it was the sheriff reminded this group at the meeting that, we're at holidays, and you're going to have a lot of people in your house. Lock up your drugs, because it could be, a relative that is struggling with addiction, and they're going to go in and they might only take a handful of pills out of your bottle. You might not miss them. But that's how bad the addiction can be. So yeah, people, they do try to reach out to their doctors. I know our medical community is very alert and aware, and certainly will help direct them to resources. But unfortunately, some people will start to get that sense of desperation, and they'll start reaching out to other places to get their drugs. And it's a terrible way to go. It really is. I mean, people literally, they just fall asleep and they never wake up.
So you think, is this something we can overcome?
I do. Part of our problem right now, and part of the reason for the lawsuit, is really to stem the amount of drugs that are out in the community now. Once we can get back a better control of those drugs, I think we've got a better ability to then make sure that the people that need the opioids can get them for the pain, but the people that are addicted aren't going to have that free access to them. And it literally is pretty much a free access right now.
Hopefully sooner than later, right?
Sooner than later. I hope this thing doesn't take too long, but I'm a lawyer. I know what it's like, and this is going to take probably a number of years to finally resolve.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.